Good evening, everyone. Trying to get myself in a nice mellow mood here. This is going to be kind of a different director's commentary. We have now done a director's commentary for, I'm pretty sure, every Survivorman episode. When I finished up with the very first two episodes, my Survivorman pilot episodes, which I just recently put up. We're done with those. We also have, I'm pretty sure, all of the Survivorman Bigfoot films are now done as director's commentaries. So next up will be the Beyond Survival series. And it actually has a host of kind of more interesting behind-the-scenes stories filming that series. I actually think that series is my best work to date. I really loved making the Beyond Survival series, and you can see all those episodes in the playlist right on this channel. But tonight, we are going, by popular request, by the way, I am going to do a director's commentary on what is my very first film ever. And there's a long-winded story that I will not get into about how this all came about. But in the end, this is the story of my wife Sue and I spending our year in the remote northern wilderness of Canada. And I've got a lot that I could say about just even doing that, you know, and I'll drop some, hopefully some pearls along the way here. But what I can say right now is that this film became my calling card that I could show to the Discovery Channel when I then had, you know, sort of an idea of doing this survival show. And I wanted to be able to prove that, hey, I can make a film. Here's a film I made. It won a bunch of awards. There's a whole whack of stories. And I won't turn this into a 4-hour commentary, but it could be. So without further ado, let's get right into this. And I will say that the music that you're going to hear, I was really blessed and lucky that through a guy I was working with, Jake Thomas, really good film editor and filmmaker, and he worked also with Cottage Life Television, as did I. And, well, his dad is actually a famous Canadian musician, Ian Thomas. And I mean, I grew up listening to Ian Thomas and many, many hits on the radio and international hits as well. In fact, maybe there's something, Luke, you can show them of Ian Thomas's work. So I certainly was a big fan of Ian's, but you know, at this point in the game, I'm older, and I've done this documentary film, and I need some help scoring the music for it. So Jake introduced me to his father, and I met Ian, and I learned some great and wonderful things from Ian Thomas, and we proceeded to also then make a lot of the music for this, or some of the music for this. I also brought in oh my gosh, Kevin Kloss. Sorry, Kev. I was thinking my other Wild Harvest partner, Kevin Coswin, but Kevin Kloss, an amazing musician from Northern Ontario, did a lot of the music for this as well. So let's just get started in this. This is my very first ever film. This is the year 1994. So there you have the premise, and I should say that this film, I edited this film, I learned editing on this film, and I have many people to thank for getting me through all this, but right out of the starting gate, a big one would be Tony Armstrong, who was the executive producer and producer of Cottage Life Television and director and so on. He literally gave me, which back then edit suites were, $35,000 for an edit suite. And he gave me their edit suite to learn in overnight on all the night shifts while editing this film. And in some ways, finally in middle life, here was someone willing to mentor me and help me accomplish my goals. And I've never forgotten that, Tony. I'm going to interrupt the hell out of this, so I highly recommend you sit back with a glass of wine or a cup of tea and watch this film on its own. It's highly meditative. It's like Wild Harvest. It's a great thing to watch before bed, and I think it's quite beautiful. But I'm going to be interrupting it. So, it's right here on this channel if you want to see it on its own.
A consuming passion. That's what motivates us to spend so much time in the wilderness. Practicing traditional bush skills of 500 years ago was, I think, simply our excuse to justify getting out there for an entire year. But we had set our parameters. No metal, no plastic, no matches, no nylon tent. Nothing between the wilderness and us. The bugs, the cold, and all the elements. Life in nature, on its own terms.
Start right there, North Bay Canoe. They specially made this canoe for us for this expedition, if you will, this year in the bush. Bill and Nona Scorzy. I'm not even sure if they're still with us. Wonderful, wonderful human beings who built this beautiful canoe. So yeah, gorgeous cedar strip canvas canoe. I still have it.
Not taking in food would have turned this into a year-long fight for survival. So in keeping with the experience, we committed to using only the traditional foods of the native culture of this land. Foods like wild rice, squash, beaver and moose meat, and bear fat. And thankfully for our taste buds, maple sugar. It was
some of you, especially maybe the younger ones of you, are going to be curious about, well, how do you get to do something like this? And I'd like to address that throughout the film and hopefully pre-answer some of your questions. What I can tell you is we spent a full year researching where to do this, and we were getting stymied at every turn. We tried all around the Muskokas and Temagami, and then further north from Temagami, and just no matter where we went, the most remote lake, if you sit still long enough, people come through. We needed some place where we would see no one for 12 straight months. And that's really hard to accomplish. These remote, tiny little lakes in northern Ontario, that's possibly where it can happen, unless it's a good fishing lake. Somebody's coming in, or there's probably a remote cabin on the lake that's owned by some fishing lodge further away. It was really difficult. And it was a friend of mine, Wes Raboe, who recommended, why don't you go up and check out Wabakimi? You know, it's the start of the Arctic watershed. It's pristine, it's beautiful. And so we did. And almost in a last gasp, like in September or October, we went and go, oh my gosh, okay, this will work. But everywhere else we tried, I gotta say, there's people out there. You don't think there are. Place looks remote and pristine. That's because you're passing through it. Sit still for 3 days and people will pass you. And sometimes a lot more than you were ever expecting.
Possible to take the year's supply of all the meat we had jerkied and blueberries we had squished and sun-dried in our canoes on the long paddle into our location. So our only expected interruption for the year was to be a food drop by two friends in late September. It's not unusual for anyone to lament the ending of a canoe trip or the cottage season and voice a desire to stay out. But for us, the strength and depth of our desire would lead us away from 33 years of city life and into a life of wilderness living. If we had to, we would come out to civilization for a family or medical emergency. But then, in keeping with a pattern we have always longed for, we would run, not away from civilization, but to the bush.
And before we go into the backstory now, I'm going to tell you an end story. We had hooked up with Ellis Entertainment, and they were going to help us produce this and finish this film. It's Ralph Ellis and his son Steven. And Ralph was a nice man. Everything was cool there, though he was closing out in terms of the business. And Steven was only about the business. He didn't get the creativity at all. The guy didn't have a creative bone in his body. He was just the business guy. He loved the deal. He used to say to me, I just love cutting the deal. And we came out, and you're going to learn later within the scope of this film, we came out in the middle of this film for some emergencies. Then we went right back in again. One was my father dying, and the other was Sue having a very dangerous miscarriage out there. And we went right back in again. Let me say that again. And we went right back in again. Well, when the whole thing was done, and we came out, Steven, and Ralph had kind of more retired now, Steven Ellis had said to me, yeah, we're not going to make the film now. Because you said you were going to stay in there all year, and you cheated. You came out. We spent a whole year living in the bush, came out for a father's death and Sue's miscarriage, and he called that cheating, and they refused to make the film. And to add to the story, and this is where I learned how to become very calculated in business affairs and deals. We said, I want out of the contract then. So they weren't going to, not only were they not going to make the film, they weren't going to let us make the film. So I want give us out of the contract then. And I wouldn't do it. So I brought in a lawyer, and I went up against his lawyer, I think, or did I might have even done it myself, and wanted to get this release. And there was like the deal, parts of the deals that, of how the release was going to be, and I wanted full release of the thing. Well, while their lawyer was in the air, there had been like a time limit on the answer, and Steven couldn't answer. Say if he couldn't sign without the lawyer. I said, well, you've got to sign now. Can't remember what the rush was because. And so I got Steven to sign, and his lawyer, who later his company, Stephen Stone, would end up becoming my lawyer, was livid with Steven Ellis for signing the deal because he was trying to phone him from the airplane with a special phone and everything, and it wasn't working. And I knew this, and I got him to sign, so I was able to get a full release. But the guy was an ass, a complete and stupid ass. I'm like, really? That's what you're gonna do? You're gonna say we cheated because we came out because my father died, and I stood beside him and held his hand as he died, and then later because my wife had a miscarriage out there in the bush. And both times, like when my father died, we were only out for like 3 or 4 days. When Sue had the miscarriage, we were out for about 10 days. That was it. And we went back in again. Anyway, a little backstory there. I guess that was my first introduction into the nastiness of the film business. Yeah. It definitely carried on from there, but I learned.
The preparation stages were very exciting for us, although very labor-intensive. It took about 1.5 years of continual learning and practicing. Organizing the traditional food, researching and making our primitive living supplies kept us extremely busy. Fashioning primitive implements, with most of the knowledge coming from books or trial and error, was no easy feat. Months of work gathering clay and tempering it with sand or clamshells to make pottery ended in mostly blown up or broken pots. Utilizing the animal brain by rubbing it into the hide was the traditional method for making containers and clothing. This was our plan until after 2 months of continual scraping of more than 20 moose hides, we discovered them one day in a rotting, putrid mess.
Our first intentions for being out there were to really just get a year alone in the bush together. To have that experience of the two of us in isolation in remote northern Canadian bush. why we ended up going sort of the primitive route, connected to the teaching we've been doing, the courses we ran, and just gave us a kind of almost an excuse for being out there to practice these skills a period longer than just a weekend, to really put them through the test over an entire year. Our primitive gear consisted of what we would need for normal daily living. We had some burned out bowls that we put ashes in and carved them out. They would...
So to stop right here, I don't know if you noticed the transition was a dissolve from face to face. This was before the days where you wouldn't dare do a hard cut on somebody talking. Now it's everywhere, it's ubiquitous. But in those days, if someone flubbed their line or whatever, cleaned their throat or something, and you wanted to get from one sentence to the next, you would put in a cutaway, a different picture, or in this case, I got away with this dissolve. It was going to be years later when cutting hard on somebody talking straight to camera became completely and totally acceptable as it is today. So it's something when you watch filmmaking and how much it's changed over the past 25 years.
Be our dinnerware and our cutlery. We had pottery that was fired in the ground and used for cooking all of our meals in. We had some bows and arrows, some throwing sticks, and one stone axe, and a digging stick, and that was about it. And then our food supply. We also had with us our traditional food supply. To try to go in and live off the land, as you might often hear people go in and they lived off the land, that's a tough go. Never mind being primitive, it's a tough go with modern tools like guns and knives. To be totally primitive, it's almost impossible, especially without a lifetime of skill level.
Now that's really was a big, huge lesson with all of this. You know, the true nowadays. I mean, YouTube has these like back to the landers. Okay, I'm just going to be sorry. I should drink more wine and I'll be smoother with this. But I'll just be totally. Here's my cynicism. Here's cynical Les coming out. I mean, it's all such a bunch of bullshit. You know, you're looking at these back to the landers and they're driving a $80,000 pickup truck. They've got backhoes. They've got expensive camera gear, you know, and they're installing hot tubs and all this sort of stuff. And they're calling it off the grid, back to the land. It's not. It's not at all. In fact, you need to be quite wealthy to be able to pull that off. And YouTube provided a lot of the wealth for some as they got into it, literally in the millions in terms of what they made off of their YouTube views. And here we are, you know, years ago, 1994, trying to do, I mean, and let's be honest here, there's always been a back to the land movement. There were back to land movements in the late 60s and early 70s, back to land movements in the 50s. There was always been back to the land movements. A lot has changed. A lot more was very possible. And I would submit that what Sue and I did here was the last of the era of it being possible in a real primitive way. And I'll get more into why I say that a little bit later in terms of legalities and things like that. But this concept that you can go as a couple and live off the land, it's not real. You know, indigenous tribes were tribes. Two people left alone or one person left alone was considered banishment and certain death. So that was a big lesson to learn through all of this.
Our most difficult problem was where to do it. The Great Lakes Boreal Forest crossover region contained the wild edibles and topography we were most familiar with. But it seems wherever you go in that region, you find a hunting or fishing lodge, snowmobile trail or canoe route. When you get right down to it, there's not much unaccessed wilderness left alone out there, and we were looking for solitude. We had some serious concerns on how we would deal with the bugs. I mean, we had no fly repellent or no screening of any sort. We were concerned about that. We'd done survival before where you have a tough time smearing mud all over you to protect you from the mosquitoes. But that's not fun. It's brutal. I don't think we were naive. We just didn't have any real gripping fears about what we were about to do.
I've never felt that there was the risk of an attack. We did have a bear come through camp in the fall. I never felt threatened by them. They're around. You know they're around. You keep your camp clean. You don't invite them with smells and things like that. So there's always a possibility, but never really felt threatened. It's a comfort thing. When you're out there, you lose that uneasiness. The firewood was an ongoing thing. The food preparation was constant because of the fire and because of the length of time it took to cook meals. And being that neither Les or I really wanted to be glued to the fire cooking, that was a big challenge for us.
Although very unfamiliar
You can read that as Sue never did like the kitchen.
to us, we did find.
So it was tricky that way. We tag teamed. And I think what you get good at in situations like this is you get good at understanding where your partner is strong and where you're strong, and then you can take advantage of that, and also relieve the other person. You know, if Sue might relieve me when it comes to stacking firewood and chopping firewood, and I might relieve her when it comes to baking bannock bread, and vice versa, back and forth sort of thing. So you do learn to complement each other's skills, and that's really a great way to do it.
Finally discover a fairly isolated area just south of the Albany River in northern Ontario, the outstandingly beautiful region of the Wabakimi Wilderness.
Sue and I didn't go out in the bush for a year for a particular cause. We didn't have anything to prove. And although the weather and other elements would test our ability to survive in the bush, our goal was to practice primitive living skills. We had no intention of losing life or limb. We took in emergency medical gear and supplies, a two-way radio, and although strictly traditional, a food supply. There was no camera crew, just a handy cam that we had borrowed and a tripod. So come with us through some wonderful experiences and some tragedy as well, to our home, the outstandingly beautiful Canadian wilderness.
And obviously this scene was shot after the year and after the film was made, because we came out pregnant with the little girl in the background there, Raylan, when we did finish the expedition. So it was a matter of like, I need something else to bridge the storytelling here. How can I do this? There's some points that are missed that I want to get across. And well, let's just do this. And away we go. Interrupt now this beautiful music of Kevin's to say that so it's obviously all standard definition, and it was courtesy of Olympus cameras that, you know, we had no money, zero, so Olympus cameras gave us a small Handycam, which was not going to give me broadcast quality, but it was still good enough, shall we say, in capturing the story. And I had a lot of learning to do. You know, I was a brand new filmmaker. And you're not going to hear me doing any dissing of my ex-wife. What I can tell you to the favor is that she was definitely one of the strongest canoeists I ever met. She was unstoppable in a canoe and on the portage trails. What's completely missed here, here's this beautiful serene paddling into our lake, which is technically Goldsboro Lake in Wabakimi Provincial Park before it was a park. Here we are in this serene thing, and what's completely missed, and we did a 5-day journey, I think, maybe more than that. I've lost track now. Multi-day journey we did this paddling, come up this creek, and going up this creek turned out to be a brutal experience. I mean, getting all our gear up through past waterfalls, and the bugs were bad, and Sue developed some sort of weird mouth ulcer thing. We don't know why, but on the way through, we're still getting there, so we stopped at a resort to talk to people, say hi. I remember she had a Coke and a chocolate bar, and she just broke out in all these and she was in just agonizing pain, but she just kept pushing hard through all of this. She was, as I say, she was really unstoppable as a canoeist. But anyway, here we are in this serene view of entering the lake. But in fact, this is many days of canoeing just to get to this spot, and 4 of those days were pure hell.
Gracefully done. Wow.
After leaving from the native community of Armstrong, Ontario, we paddled and portaged for about a week and a half and arrived at a small unused lake that would be our personal paradise for the next 12 months.
So if you're looking in Wabakimi Provincial Park, Goldsboro Lake, that's where this entire experience takes place. And I said I promised I would tell some stories about permissions and all the rest of it. There is a story to tell, and I'll get to that in a minute. Oh, let's stop right here. So, you see us in regular clothing. We actually have photographs of us wearing the deer hide clothing we'd made. Now remember, we wanted to be very primitive with this whole thing, and that included our clothing. So we had this whole thing where we had all these moose hides and everything, and then we had that mishap where so many of them rotted. So then we took the remaining ones and we sent them in to get tanned, because we were tanning all of our own hides, deer hides and moose hides. Big, big job. And I will say that along the way, André-François Bourbeau, I went to see him, and he gave me a dire warning in that you have taken on too much work. And he was right, we had. But anyway, they rotted. We sent a bunch in. We got them all back tanned, but they were tanned chemically. Not the way you would traditionally, which I can do, you do with animals' brains and so on. And because they were tanned chemically, it would be like a leather jacket you might get at the store sort of thing. And that is not the same as the methodology that the indigenous cultures utilized when they tanned their hides. And what they did was much better in the weather. Hot, cold, wet, you name it. Our clothing it would be like being naked and just dressed in leather the entire time. And so not really in the traditional sense of hide clothing at all. It was a joke, really. So we tried that. We even tried it when we got there. We had the clothing with us. We tried it for like 2 days, and like, this is stupid. But I also felt this is dumb. We look like we're cosplaying natives here. This is not right. So I didn't like that we were, it looked like we were trying to look native, and I didn't want that at all. This was a personal experience here, and we were using primitive earth skills, absolutely, because those are skills that I knew and I loved. But looking the part in native clothing was like a bridge too far, man. And so we just said, you know what, forget it. And I don't even know, I think I still have some of the clothing here. I think I'll auction it off. But I think we just used it maybe as blanketing or something while we were there. But so we made the better choice and said, it doesn't matter, let's go with our regular clothing so that we can continue on with this experience.
With the use of only a stone axe and whatever the bush provided, we had to build our summer shelter from the ground on up. We couldn't have guessed just how long it would take to complete some of the more simple tasks without the use of a steel axe or saw. Every single pole put in use had to be burned to size, and just finding ones we could haul back to camp took a great deal of time.
Some people seemed almost obsessed with wondering how we could keep clean for a whole year. But the answer was simple. Every day we washed off, no soap, just water. And without civilization's car exhaust or pollution, it was easy to stay clean.
Actually, Sue makes a really good point there. That was something that, it was unbelievable how many women would be obsessed with Sue's hair. Like, how did you wash your hair? But her hair was never more healthy than that whole year in the bush where she never used shampoo once. It was thick and rich, and I'm not sure what the words would be to describe it, but healthy. How about that? And it was ridiculous how many, that was like the biggest question from women.
I think we would have liked to have laid back and just soaked in the beauty of it all. But in keeping with the last year and a half, and as we would find out, the coming year as well, we had to get right down to work. It was mid-May, and the spring rains were coming soon. It was an unusually wet year, and the rain was a constant reminder that we had to stop or slow down to nature's pace.
Without modern conveniences, keeping dry was an ever-present concern as it seemed to rain 8 out of 10 days. Life in the bush is constant preparation. You're always preparing for bad weather.
Well, there you have it. That's pretty much been the picture for about 4 straight days. Strong north and northwest winds. You can see the misting off in behind the island. It's been misting off and on every single day. Makes it very difficult to get anything done. And even worse to try and get out in the canoe.
So in terms of our implements, we were, still honed in on just the pottery we had, the wooden plates, the wooden utensils. We had no real axe. So that's how we kind of went through all of these phases. Other than the fact that we went back to our regular clothing, it pretty much was a very primitive existence, with the exception of having to work the camera gear sort of thing.
It was just after we arrived on the lake that we started
Oh, come on. Look at that shelter. Tell me that's not cool. I forgot just how kind of cool this was. Yeah. I mean, obviously it's a classic TP formation, but we wanted room. We wanted the smoke to go up and out. We didn't want to asphyxiate ourselves with smoke this year. And that's where we put, actually I can see some of our clothing is on this, that's what we did with it. We put our clothing on this teepee. Some of it anyway, some of the hides we had.
experiencing reoccurring stomach cramping and nausea. We assumed that it must have been something from our new diet of the traditional moose meat or bear fat, or the wild rice, or maybe even eating out of the slow-cooking pottery. In the back of our minds, we were fearful that it was the water. We wouldn't discover the culprit until after 7 months of dealing with it. There was always so much to do. Containers to make, food and firewood to gather, without a saw. The progress on making primitive implements is painfully slow to anyone used to our modern time schedule. And eating out of earth pottery, gourds, and off slabs of wood is not all that exciting. We had very little idle time. One of the biggest lessons we learned about primitive living is that you really need a full community of people to accomplish all the tasks of a traditional lifestyle. In fact, they would have normally considered 2 people alone in the bush a form of punishment and certain death. In a community, someone is the snowshoe maker, someone the hunter, someone for fire, cooking, clothing, shelter. The list goes on. Without the aid of modern inventions, just surviving out here can be a dangerous ordeal. Days were spent fishing for northern pike with a line made from twisted bark and a bone hook as we settled into nature's rhythms. And although we missed family and friends, we never felt lonely or distressed by the isolation. We were living a dream come true.
I remember that shot there, and Kevin Kloss was working on the music, said, Sue's quite fetching in those shots. And yeah, she is actually.
Without the use of screening or bug repellent, the choice of a windy point for our summer location served us well to escape the hordes of mosquitoes and blackflies. But as this picture of Sue with 60 blackfly bites shows, we would be hit hard whenever searching for materials in the thick bush. Each night we received a 10-minute warning whenever the wind was calm. There is a strange and ominous phenomenon that takes place in the bush. Just when the sun is almost gone, you can hear a far-reaching, moaning buzz. It's the sound of zillions of mosquitoes warming up their body temperatures in preparation of flying around on their nightly search for blood. It takes almost exactly 10 minutes. After that, anyone left out is fair game.
Now that's a real story. I've told that story many times before about the 10-minute warning when it comes to mosquitoes. You can hear them across the lake. The whole lake echoes with the sound of mosquitoes, and it's mosquitoes still attached to their grass blades, basically, warming up by vibrating their wings, and it warms up their body temperature. And if the temperature, the ambient temperature and their body temperature gets to the right degree, they're off and running, searching for blood. But I've heard it happen also where they get this whole thing going, and you hear buzzing, 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 and a cool breeze comes into the region, drops the temperature 2 degrees, and all of the buzzing just stops, and they don't come out because it's too cold for them. It's really fascinating to experience this over time, and of course, I've experienced thousands of days of mosquitoes and black flies. What was interesting to me was that I thought we would be inundated in our shelter by mosquitoes. I mean, this is not a screened tent. They can come in anytime they want. And they didn't. And I wonder if it's not because A, pretty smoky in there, and so we've always got the smoke going up. B, zero use of soap or shampoos or cleansers or cleaners that way at all. So we didn't stink. In fact, we washed every single day. We washed in the lake. We were quite clean, but we didn't smell perfumed in any way, shape, or form. And so the mosquitoes left us alone inside that very holy shelter, which was fantastic.
On this year-long honeymoon, Sue and I realized that times of peace and beauty were special moments to be treasured.
Hello, operator. I'm calling from a radio phone, and I'd like to make a collect call to area code 416 406.
Through our two-way emergency radio, we received news that my father was given only a few days to live due to cancer. After only 2 months in the bush, we would come out to civilization once again. People have often asked us if we experienced a culture shock on the last day of our year out. But it was when we came out from my father that we had the strangest of psychological shocks.
Hello, Robert. Can you hear me?
Just about, Lance. How are you?
Very well. I'm calling on the radio phone, and we could get cut off at any moment.
On the same day, through connecting flights from Thunder Bay, Ontario, we went from the shore of our wilderness home to a taxicab on the 401 in Toronto. Still in bush clothes on the way to see my father, I felt numb.
I've always liked that I put these shots in here because this stark juxtaposition of this with the wilderness. It's just so, it's potent. It's profound. And I literally did go from the shore of our lake to this by the end of the day. And it wasn't, I think this was more of the cultural shock moment than at the end of the year it was this particular day. At the end of the year, you're getting ready for it, your mind's ready, you know, we're moving on, da da da. But this here, like, I wasn't expecting this to happen. And my father was in probably, I forget the name of the hospital, but it's in downtown Toronto, looks after cancer patients. So yeah, right from the shore, right to downtown Toronto, within, let's call it, it was June, so there was lots of daylight, that's why it could happen. Let's call it 9-10 hours.
After only 2 days in Toronto, I stood by my father and held his hand as he passed away. I felt a great need to be back in the wilderness to deal with this loss. 7 days later, we left the city.
That's all clear cut, by the way, in case you're wondering. Wabakimi, like so many places in northern Canada, is the victim of massive clear cutting. It's insane when you see a clear cut for yourself, and up there they just mow it down.
Wilderness solitude is a long way from the chaos of a city, and though movies give the impression you can talk inside the cockpit of a small plane, you cannot. The loudness of a plane keeps you speechless, and your thoughts are for yourself. After dropping you off, it will leave your ears ringing until it lifts above the treetops, and you stand alone in the immensity and power of the quiet wilderness.
True story about that. Yeah, when you're dropped off by a remote bush plane, they're really loud. Movies makes it look like you can talk while that's all going on. Not the case. It's really loud, and if you are talking, it's on headphones, and it's loud when they land, and it's loud when they take off, and then after they take off, nothing. It's really amazing.
We couldn't waste any time. Everything had become moldy and damp after only 10 days away. We had to get right back to work.
10 days away. You know, I think that's a script mistake, because I think this was actually the 4-day visit, and later was the 10-day thing for for the miscarriage. Maybe I got them reversed. Maybe it was 10 days and 4 days. But I think that might be a script mistake. Yeah, I don't know. It's been a long time. Let's see. 94, 95, so. Wow. I don't even want to add up those years.
Spruce roots would make for a strong cordage to hold things together for our year. Rocks, roots, branches, bark, and moss, all the elements of a good bush shelter. Practicing wilderness survival before our year out always seemed like a bit of a game. Out here it was no game. Either protect yourself or suffer.
Well, after finally getting a day of no rain or just a little bit of misting, we were able to take it to this stage where we've just about completed it.
Now, as you watch this section, I want you to note something. This is the moment where I really planted the seed of Survivorman. This is the beginning of me teaching something on camera. And I kind of loved every moment of it. And, you know, it definitely, you know, made me realize I can have fun with this, and led me into eventually doing Survivorman.
We haven't finished this end yet. We ran out of birch bark, so we've just thrown up some of our deer hide, raw hide, just to check that in. We'll come back later and put some birch bark on there. The birch bark worked out really well, shingled from the bottom, working our way up, just like a regular shingling system. And we were actually surprised, the gelling from the A-frame into the teepee went really well. It went very smoothly. We didn't have too many holes or gaps to worry about. The hides come over, so I think it's going to work fairly well that way. After we put all the birch bark on, we've layered the moss on top to give us a lot more insulation. We still have to do this area up in here. And the last thing we're doing is basically you just throw on anything you can. Just get down like an animal and just scrape it all up from the ground and throw on all the debris you can. And then these are just old rotted logs that are lying around, and they can help a lot just to deflect even that much more rain. So there's no reason why not just to throw them on if you've got the time. And that's basically all I'm doing here and on the other side. Is using up these old logs for good purpose. And I feel like I'm on Home Improvements.
And there you go. First scene ever of me teaching a survival skill on camera, which would end up eventually giving me an entire career and a life.
Constructing our shelter, we would prune from individual spruce trees the boughs we needed for our bed,
I am not that thin right now.
and collect only dead birch bark and branches to use as the roofing. In this way, we tried to impact our surroundings as little as possible. Sue and I wanted to live in a primitive fashion not only to test our acquired skills, but because we believed we could achieve a more connectedness with the land. Well, we did achieve that, and there is a profound joy felt as you become more aware of the living and breathing force of the natural world. A great deal of time is taken in the making of something as simple as a spruce bough bed. Being comfortable in the wilderness is an art form.
I actually learned spruce floor and spruce bed making from the Cree in Mistassini, Quebec, when I was up there working and teaching. And I'd be teaching during the day and learning from the elders at night. And they're the ones who taught me how to do a proper spruce bough floor and spruce bough bed. And that's been a great skill to know throughout lots of survival expeditions.
Fire is a key and vital component to survival. It can take up to a few days just to find all the right materials for a fire bow. We had to keep our fire going 24 hours a day, which without an axe or saw meant gathering wood for at least half the day. Another quarter of the day was spent cooking slowly in pottery, where the smallest draft could crack or explode your pot. To make matters worse, we were suffering from a severe lack of energy due to our as yet unknown stomach problems. So far, our time of living primitive had been nothing but hard work.
Life in the wilderness is basically fire. It's all about fire. Prepping your fire, prepping your firewood, all of that, it's all about fire. It's just everything revolves around that. It's amazing.
Sue and I are more at home in a canoe than anywhere else, cutting across the glassy surface of a lake, or maneuvering down a boulder-strewn set of rapids is life at its best for us. On our life's journey, canoeing has always represented freedom. For this year, it would be freedom from the bugs and tangled, dense bush. Our hearts and spirits soar as we dip our paddles in the water, and we are compelled to feel reverence for the beauty and power of the natural world. There is nothing like experiencing nature from the vantage point of a canoe.
And I think that, we did take the time whenever possible to just get out and paddle for no reason. We were working so hard, so much, all the time, looking for shelter materials, looking for blueberry patches, looking for edible plants, and that you also have to take the time and paddle for no reason at all, which we did often.
It's nice, eh? Won't be many days like this left. That's for sure.
People have, described this film to me as, well, it was very romantic. Yes, it was. And so it should be. A year in the wilderness with your partner. And of course, some people respond, I ain't spending a year in the wilderness with that guy. But when you're with the right person, a year out in nature, it is romantic. It better be romantic. It has to be romantic, if nothing at all. The connection to the natural world, the flow of life with the natural world is also very romantic. In case you're wondering, that is a moose with a bad case of mange. They've been really taking it to its the moose hair, unfortunately. It'll grow back, but that's what you're looking at there, a female moose. Huh. I have to admit, even watching this now, all these years later, it's still it's mesmerizing, even for me, and I lived it, you know. This is a good spot because everything's about to change here now, as you can see. So good spot for me to go top up my wine and Luke to hawk some swag. I'll be right back. Hey everyone, allow me to interrupt myself. I don't really like hawking merchandise and swag, but you guys do ask all the time where you can get certain items. For example, check this out, Hennessy hammock. I put a lot of time and effort into designing this hammock with Hennessy. It's their top hammock. It's an amazing, beautiful, comfortable hammock to enjoy for all of your adventures out there, so just check it out. It's got a full-size tarp, which is a big thing for me. It's got insulation, and I love it. So I've got the Hennessy hammocks. Of course, for years I've been in a phenomenal relationship with Hella of Norway, Hella Knives. And this is our signature knife, of course, the Tamagami. These knives are handmade. In fact, I've been there to this very ancient factory where I don't know how many, it's well over 100 years that they've been operating, and every single handle is handmade. All of the grinding, everything is done by hand. And these knives are absolutely beautiful. I also now have a brand new relationship, and you will see these items, new forging tools that I'm designing with LT Wright Knives out of Ohio. And also, Chef Paul Rogalski of Wild Harvest has the signature Chef Paul Rogalski kitchen knife collection. Those are a big thrill to me, to have these beautiful items that we spent years designing, and I still have them available for you. However, if you want to go more the route of just enjoying the Survivorman legacy, if you will, then of course, go to my website, lestroud.ca, go to the shop page. Right there, you've got everything. All the swag, all the merch, such as my manual on survival. This is if you want to get into survival. This book is meant to be a way to walk you through step by step, because I deal a lot more with concepts than I do with specifics, because that's really important. Once you understand the concepts of fire by friction, for example, you can do it depending on where you are, because I can't give you the advice on how to do it here in Canada and hope that it's also going to work down in the jungle. Things are different. So I've always been very proud of this book, Survive. So that is my survival manual. Also, if you weren't aware, I've got the book Will to Live. I wrote this book well, it's kind of for a lot of fun. I took my 10 favorite survival stories, such as Chris McCandless Into the Wild or the Robertson family and the life raft, and I basically dissect them with this book. I tear apart the story, I go through everything, and I even give them a little bit of a grade on how I thought they did. So I really enjoyed writing this book. It's a real easy read, it's a fast read, but I think there's a lot of insight there for you into all of these different examples of people who have either survived or perished. Speaking of books, so honored, so thrilled, so proud that Wild Outside, my first children's book, has won the Yellow Cedar Award, Best Nonfiction Children's Book in Canada for ages 7 to 14. I tell stories from Survivorman, lessons learned during those expeditions and adventures, and there are even activities they can do in the out of doors. So there you go. My new book, my children's book, Wild Outside, Around the World with Survivorman, has just won the Yellow Cedar Award, and I'm up for another award yet. And in keeping with stuff that's going on right now, we are also up for an award for our Season 1 recipe book from the series Wild Harvest. And if you've never caught the series Wild Harvest, check this out.
Hey, Les!
Gotta watch the whales!
Oh my gosh! This perhaps is the most incredible kitchen scenario I've ever had.
Can you create a dish where the domestic ingredients don't overshadow the wild ingredients?
This dish is a showcase of how great these foraged ingredients come together.
It's the best when it's its own flavor. When you're making something with a wild edible, you're nailing it and not losing the wild flavor. Tell me that doesn't look awesome. 2 seasons right now, 26 episodes. In the United States, it's on PBS stations. You can also get it on this YouTube channel. In Canada, Cottage Life TV. In Sweden and Norway, on Matt Cannellan. It's on National Geographic. Asia, which includes China and India. So my Wild Harvest series is playing around the world now, and we, with every single season, create a recipe book based on the recipes that we show you in the actual shows themselves. So that's Wild Harvest, and of course, if you want the DVD, you can get that on this website as well, lesstroud.ca. And let's not forget, too, that I'm a musician. The CDs themselves are available on the website. The next release will be the re-release of the Mother Earth album on vinyl. But go on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you listen to music, or on my website. You can go to the shop page. You can pick up all of my CDs. So this is the last one. This is my 20th anniversary selection. Check it out. Every film I've ever made, 76 films in all of the Survivorman, Bigfoot, Beyond Survival, music documentaries, one-off films such as the award-winning La Loche about the school shooting up in Canada and a healing canoe trip. This is my 20th anniversary, 76 films. And people that have picked this up have raved about it. And I'm really proud that I can say I've got 20 years of anything, to be honest with you. That's available for you as well on that Les Stroud shop page. Okay, that's me hawking my stuff. Back to the video.
Are you filming this? Somebody has to be the one to make the noise. Otherwise,
Doug Getgood and Fred Rowe were two close friends we had bring in a food and supply drop in late September.
Let's stop right there. So you can see all, those are our remnant hides that was part of our to put around the shelter. And here's Doug and Fred. Now Fred and Doug were my very first ever survival instructors in Dave Arama's class. So Dave Arama was running the class. Fred and Doug were assistant instructors. And I learned a lot from these two guys. A ton of my knowledge. And Doug on the left there, he was just unstoppable in the world of survival. And we knew they were coming in. They were bringing in our resupply. And it's a long story, but one guy had let us down badly. And I sort of got the phone call out to Fred and Doug to give us a hand and say, can you bring in our supplies? They've been left, they've been abandoned, sort of thing. And so Fred and Doug were coming in to check and see how we were, bring in a few things. What we weren't counting on was this intrusion. I mean, we love them, but the intrusion of the propane stove and the clanging and the metal and the blue colors and all this stuff was foreign. It was like, oh, we'd already been enough months where it's like, oh. And we just felt they were, and Sue's about to say, they were so incredibly loud. They weren't, but they sounded like that to us.
It was exciting and wonderful for us to have their visit, but they were talking so loud and so fast, or so it seemed to us. The clanging of metal and the modern food felt like more of an intrusion than a welcomed convenience. But we reveled in the conversation and friendship, and they served as a great reminder to us that winter was just around the corner and we had better get working. We hadn't even started building our winter shelter yet.
This is our primitive chef.
So in many ways, you know, it felt pretty incongruent to the situation. That's why I'm joking. Yeah, this is our primitive food. Here's our primitive chef. I didn't realize they were going to bring in so much of modernity to our existence. And as we'll learn here, I think they did serve us well by saying, you guys are way behind. That winter is right around the corner, and you are not ready for winter. You need to get ready for winter or you're going to perish. And we did heed their warning. They were right. We had been lulled into this, not complacency, but we'd been lulled into this amazing existence in the warm weather, in this paradise, and we had not been prepping ourselves properly for the bitter, bitter cold that was about to come and the deep snow. And so, yeah, Fred and Doug kind of like just kept reinforcing that we need to get a move on. And so we did move locations. We're now in the winter location, which is much more protected from the wind.
Fred expressed great concern about our ability to be ready for the winter.
Told
He
ya.
insisted on cutting some 8-foot chunks of wood out in the bush for us to haul in later for firewood.
Yeah, I couldn't stop him. They had a chainsaw. Imagine now hearing a chainsaw in amongst all of this. And I got a little story for you as well, I'll tell. But, you know, Fred said, nope, I'm going out. I'm cutting some 8-foot chunks. If you don't want to use them, don't use them. But I'm cutting them so you know they're there if you need them. And he went out and he cut a whole bunch of 8-foot long trees that were all horizontal. They were all dead and dried. It was perfect firewood, actually, to make sure that we were going to be okay. And it was really a lifesaver that he did that.
The snow was just around the corner, and the difference between our energy level and theirs seemed extreme.
And there's the wood that he cut for us. One sad moment was, and it was funny, when Doug pulled up, like from the plane and then the boat, and then come over to us, and the first thing out of Doug's mouth was, and I think he was very, very uncomfortable with telling me, because he just kind of blurted it out, Tara's dead. Tara was my dog. I mean, I was broken. I mean, I was so close to this dog. I should have brought her with us. I really should have. But she got cancer and died, and I never got a chance to say goodbye to her. And anybody who's ever lost a pet and did not get the chance to say goodbye to them knows how painful that is. I still have pain from that. I also did not get to say goodbye to my cat, Callie. And that was rough. And then there was this weird morning where Fred and Doug went off hunting, because that's what they really wanted to do. They just wanted to go hunting. So they went off hunting. We stayed working on our started to work on our winter shelter. And I heard the gunfire going off early in the morning when they got their moose. And I think I started crying because I felt like there was just too much death, you know, the death of my dog and then the death of a beautiful moose. And you know, and I'm a meat eater, so I don't want to be a hypocrite here, but man, it was rough. I woke up and I remember I woke up from a bad dream as well. I think I had a dream that Tara was jumping into my arms, and I woke up bawling my eyes out. So you can be living in paradise. It doesn't mean you escape the realities of your personal life and everything that's within it.
At this stage, we had been living primitively for 8 months, continually bothered by stomach cramps and a lack of energy. The time as well as psychological strength we had lost when we came out to see my father seemed to snowball all through the summer. And now from Doug and Fred, we received the news that the dog I had had for 11 years had died of cancer. Neither time nor confidence was on our side, and winter was on our heels. In a new location, a few kilometers away but on the same lake, we would build our winter cabin, well protected from the frigid north winds.
And I want to be clear here, we cut all of these trees. Fred had just cut up some firewood, but we went in with a handsaw and worked on this cabin this way. And I got to say, I am no builder. I really had no idea what I was doing.
We decided to allow ourselves the use of an axe and a handsaw to build the cabin. In addition, we allowed ourselves the use of a pot we had found in the bush and a small trapper's tin wood stove, since the smoke from the summer shelter had been getting to Sue's asthma. Once again, we had to get right down to work. Doug and Fred had left behind the axe, saw, and stove, as well as a renewed sense of urgency to pick up our pace.
Yeah, and so that was a decision we had to make because we seemingly were so far behind. Fred was really concerned for our well-being, and Doug not so much. And you know you weren't, Doug, but Fred was. And so he's like, no, leave him behind the axe, leave him behind the saw. You don't have to use him if you don't want to. Leave him behind the pot. And in the end, it was a very smart move because we just kind of shifted from real primitive existence to sort of a trapper's, you know, or a voyageur's existence, let's say.
It took us only 14 days of extremely hard work to complete the cabin. This gave us an immense feeling of satisfaction. Once the bark and moss were on the roof, we moved in, and the very next day, we got our first snow.
Eventually the snow thawed, and we were back to work. It felt so good to build a cabin using only materials that the bush provided, like spruce roots. Not a single nail. But our stomach problems worsened. And at one point in late November, I was being sick outside, shaking violently and trying not to faint in the wet snow falling all around me. We decided to take a quick flight out to get fixed up. Giardia is a waterborne parasite. It causes sometimes negligible and sometimes severe stomach problems. Because our lake was at the top of its system, with only a small creek running out of it, it acted like a big puddle. So the Giardia had that water to accumulate in and for us to drink from.
I forgot about that one. So that was a quick, literally a 2-day turnaround. Down to Thunder Bay, got Pill's flagell to take care of the Giardia, and right back in again. So very, very fast, quick change up, and to get us back into the bush. And this cabin, by the way, sadly, I did make it out to it one time, and a huge poplar tree, and they're massive up there. Well, it hadn't taken out the whole cabin. It had taken out the passageway, hallway I built into the door of the cabin. It had crushed that. I guess the cabin was still standing the last time I was there. So who knows?
For the time being, we would boil all our water, and in the winter, we could melt snow for our fresh drinking water supply.
That's sphagnum moss. It is typically used as chinking in log cabins in the north. Often it's also mixed in with mud, but it's effective, and we should have mixed it in with mud. It would have been better.
Sphagnum moss, whether chinking your cabin for insulation, utilizing it as an antiseptic sponge for a cut, or even as toilet paper, is one of the most useful materials in the boreal forest.
That's the alcove right here. That got crushed by a poplar tree. All right, here's a little word on this. In fact, why don't we back up just a little bit, just so we can be on the cabin. There we go. I say that, you can't do this today. I could say that very, bluntly. No, you can't do this today. What do you mean you can't do it today? Well, the reality is that now it's illegal. End of story. It's illegal to build a cabin. Often in Canada, we call it Crown land or BLM land in the United States. It's illegal to do it. You can't do it anymore. And you certainly can't do it in parks. So how do you do it? Well, you don't, unless you're doing it clandestine, or maybe if you could buy remote property. You could go on a friend's piece of remote property. But you can't just go off into the wilderness and do it do it anywhere. You can, but you're breaking the law, and you gotta stay hidden. You gotta hide, you gotta be careful, because the Ministry of Natural Resources in Canada, and I'm sure various agencies in the United States, they fly over, they see cabins, they'll come in, they'll kick you out, they'll burn down your cabin in the wintertime. Happens all the time. So it's really unfortunate. We got a ton of permissions to be able to do this, and it wasn't fun. You found yourself in an office with a local yokel old-timer who's been born and raised in the area, who feels like they own the area. What are you trying to do here? Yeah, we don't think you should be doing this kind of thing. What if you die out there? It's going to be on us. All sorts of stuff like that, right? So you're up against that. But that's why I say we were at the end of an era where we got permissions to do this, but really because of Survivorman and all of the survival programming that followed it, people are savvy now. Governments are savvy. Look, what goes on with the other television shows that's nothing. That's not really people out there, in real danger. So if you want to go do that, the answer from any governing bodies is no, you can't. We don't want to be responsible for your death. Think of Into the Wild with Christmas candles, and all that stuff. Nobody wants to be responsible for you dying out there. So the answer is always going to be no now. I don't know about the rest of the world, but certainly in Canada and the United States and North America. Can you do it and sneak and hide? Yeah, you can. Do I think that would be okay to do? Yeah, I do. I would. I'd go do it again in a heartbeat. I just know how to stay hidden. But the days of doing it openly, let's say, are gone, because outfitters, pilots, they will stop you. They will let people know, hey, there's some couple out on that remote lake. They're trying to set up a little cabin out there. Oh, really? Boom. In comes the ministry. You cannot stay here. The maximum amount of time you can stay is whatever it is, 23 days, 17 days, whatever the rule is. And that's that. So that's a real thing. Kind of unfortunate. The old days of homesteading, those laws are all gone. You can't really homestead anymore. That's what it used to be called. So we got lucky. I think we were in the very last open window to have people go, okay, if you want to go live out in the bush for a year, okay. It's kind of like that, sort of reluctant too. And then we got away with it, and I made this film. But since then, I'd say the answer is always going to be no. So, you want to do it legally, private land.
While we were out for a short period to correct the Giardia problem, we received news that would tear at us emotionally. Sue's mum had been diagnosed with a fatal disease. We also returned with the knowledge that Sue was pregnant.
So that little short turnaround, we learned an awful lot. And we came back with, a heaviness on our minds. I mean, the heaviness of Sue's mom and her diagnosis, but also the heavy lightness of knowing that we were pregnant. So that's what we came back in with. It was now, I mean, the psychological and emotional aspects of life, they don't disappear when you go spend a year in the bush. They don't disappear. They might disappear for a 2-week vacation on the Nahanni River, but even then stuff creeps back in, Life is still life. It still carries on. So don't think that escaping to the wilderness is actually an escape. It's not. Unless you choose to completely disassociate yourself with life outside of the wilderness. That is different. And when I was an outdoor guide, I kind of did that. Did not care, did not know what was going on in the outside world. I barely knew what day it was, let alone sometimes I didn't know what month it was. And I loved that. I loved that so much. And we had it here on this year in the bush. But in the end, if you want to stay attached to civilization, life will always intervene and pull you from paradise. That's me, by the way.
The thing that was hardest emotionally to deal with was the news of my mom having a terminal illness, being separated from her at that time. There's always the question in your mind of, should you go in? Should you be there? And that was tough. I struggled with that.
When winter did hit, it was there to stay, and once again we had to get down to work. As always, we could only go as fast as nature would allow us. Sue and I relied upon each other with great affection.
I'm just going to stop that right there, although it's a nice point. Look at those snowshoes. Now, the ones on the left are handmade by the Cree of Mistassini. Those belong to André Francois Bourbeau, and I did eventually give them back to him. Hated giving them back to him. André, if you ever write a will, please leave those snowshoes in your will to me, because they mean something to me. They're beautiful, and they're the right kind of snowshoes for far northern existence and the kind of snow that you get up there, big poofy snow. But look at that cabin. It's been a long time since I've seen this film. It's hard. I mean, I feel it's like an out-of-body experience. I feel like I'm watching Jeremiah Johnson, except it's me, you know? That's cool.
And through circumstances like these, you develop a deep and unbreakable bond.
Well, it was unbreakable until the divorce, anyway.
Snow, winter, spruce boughs for a floor, fur, fire, keep the body warm. Where eagles fly and the caribou lie is where we've got to be. The wolf waits there for me and you and you.
A few weeks later, on a minus 35 January morning, Sue had to be helicoptered out to Thunder Bay, Ontario. She was suffering from a very painful miscarriage.
Now, let's be a little more clear about this and a little more descriptive about it. When I say she suffered from a painful miscarriage, it was a very scary night. It was brutally cold. We were in that the little cabin there, and she was hemorrhaging into one of the pots. And, we're looking at this thinking, and then it was like, I think you're losing the baby. I don't think this is happening. I think this is a miscarriage. And I mean, what do I know, right? And so we were able to, I went out first thing in the morning and I was able to get that call out, make it an emergency call and get the helicopter in to get her to the hospital because it was a lot of blood to lose. And it was scary as hell for both of us. And that's what led to this final health check where she got to Thunder Bay. They performed what they call a D&C, and then we came back, heavy-hearted yet again.
2 weeks later, we were back on our way into the bush for one last time.
We did take the time within that 2 weeks to go down and see Sue's mom after the terminal diagnosis and to deal with, give Sue a chance to recuperate from the miscarriage. And it was Sue, actually, not me, that was saying, let's go, let's get back, let's get back, let's get back. It was Sue who really wanted to get back into the bush because that was her place. That was her sweet spot. That was her zone. And she passionately loves the winter. I say loves because I'm sure she still does. Loves the winter. And we didn't want to miss the winter in our little cabin. And there's my shot that I always steal from the movie Never Cry Wolf. I did it here, and I did it in the second pilot of Survivorman. I just love this shot. But I stole it from Never Cry Wolf, the movie.
I've always believed that nature has a way of helping us get in touch with our inner feelings and make peace with ourselves, a place to heal our body and soul. After the miscarriage, the bush seemed to me to be the natural place to recuperate, both physically and mentally.
And so, yeah, I want to share that at this point now, knowing we've got, a few months left, it's the bitter cold winter, we've got this cabin built. At this point, we hadn't given up on anything, but it was more a matter of, you know what? This is for us now. This is completely and totally for us. Let's go in and do what we do best and enjoy the winter. And you know what? I lost Tara. I'm brokenhearted over that. Let's bring Tripper, our other dog, back with us. It really became about taking advantage of this, if you will, romantic setting, this winter, far northern winter forest with this little cabin that we built with our bare hands. So from here on in, we're here for us.
At minus 45 degrees outside, you could still wear a t-shirt after the heating of dinner, although water would freeze if left down on the floor. About the only serious problem with the cabin was somewhere between 40 and 50 drips. Neither Sue nor I mind hard physical labor when you're doing something you love, and although it would hit minus 50 degrees, the cold was never really a problem, as long as you respected it, along with the importance of being able to get a fire going at any time. After the trip out for Sue's miscarriage, we brought our border collie back in with us for some company this time. Other than the ravens and the gray jays, he would be kept on alert by a pair of fearless martins who made a den between the wall of our cabin and the banked up snow on the outside. Although the work was always invigorating, and it felt so good to feel our bodies strengthening, we were, by now, getting tired of it. My father had died. We had had a debilitating struggle with Giardia. We had lived very primitively for 8 months, which was all work. My dog had died, and we had learned of Sue's mom's illness. And now we had lost what would have been our first child.
When you think about that shopping list of situations that have gone on, it's not often that you have 1 year where all that stuff happens. And that's what we're going to learn about this. You know, as I said, life goes on. And life happens, whether you're hiding away in a cabin or not. And so hearing it even now and hearing myself present this list, I mean, I've had other years where nothing like that, you know. And even currently right now, you know, within the last 6 months, 3 good friends of mine have died. So why am I talking like this? Why am I using? Because I think there's an overly romanticized vision of what it must mean to go off and live in the wilderness, to go build a cabin and live in nature. It's so overly romanticized. And you have to understand that if you fully and truly want to do that, then the best way, which was when I was, for example, a canoe guide, is to not care about anything in the outside world. And that includes your family. But in this situation, I'm now married to Sue, and so what's going on? My family with my father, her family with her mother, these things matter a lot. And so don't think that you can just go do this romantic thing. I think that it's well worth it to spend a year living in the wilderness if that's something that you want to do. But if it were me, and I am going to do it again actually, Caroline and I are going to do it. And I would do it by going to either a cabin that is owned by a friend of yours or your own cabin, your own spot in the woods. And I would do it that way. And I would have some of the modern conveniences, not overly, still humble and all the rest of it. And I would do it that way, you know, because thinking you can escape society and everything that's going on in your life is a fool's game. You can't. Maybe the odd, very rare, complete and absolute utter loner can do that. But otherwise, you do remember that you have family at home, friends at home, and in some cases, money you need to make, which was our case, actually. We had no money. We were penniless doing this. I remember one time I got a question in in a presentation of this film, and a woman stood up at the back and she said, "How can you afford to do something like this?" And I said, "You can't. You can't. You just have to do it. There's no affording of it. You just have to do it." So I could go on forever. Obviously, it's a point for me that people have this romanticized version of what living off in the wilderness is. And I like to dispel a lot of myths, I guess. But I still want you to go do it.
When you think about it, none of these things had anything to do with the wilderness, with the exception of the Giardia. We had a few months to go out here, so while Sue regained her strength, now was our time to have fun and enjoy the beauty of the Canadian boreal forest.
Ooh, look at those. So those are the original, that's the original method. Actually, sorry, no, Sue's doing it wrong there. Almost the original method of how you put snowshoes on. You wear mucklucks so that your toes dig in through the hole, and what you have is a loop that goes over your toes and another one goes around the back of your ankle. But if you do it right, you don't have to use your hands. So the Cree up in Mistassini, for example, probably the Temiagami Anishinaabe and Temagami, they would have their traditional ways. You could stand up, kick your foot in, do a little twisty thing, and off you go and you walk away. And I can do it, and I was taught how to do it, and I love doing that because you never have to take your gloves off. You never have to deal with little clips and straps and stuff like that. So the old original way of wearing your snowshoes involved that's lamp wick. It would have just been more caribou hide if it were for a Cree version, for example. And I still love to snowshoe that way. I mean, I like my REI Mountain Ascents. I love them. But this is way more, it's authentic, and it too is also romantic.
Along with our other dog Tripper, it was time to strap on the snowshoes and check out the world around us. Snowshoeing allows you to slow down in the winter bush and really feel what it's all about. Strenuous work at times, but a very beautiful and natural way to travel.
And really the best way to set a snowshoe trail is to get to it early and establish it in the early part of the winter and then walk it constantly. We're planning on spending another year in the woods up in northern Ontario, Caroline and I. And when that happens, we will walk that trail every single day. Great exercise, and it keeps the trail open.
Sue summed it up perfectly one day when she said to me, "When you dream of winter, this is what you dream of."
Winter is a magical time deep in the bush. The contrast between the immense beauty of a snow-blanketed forest and the biting cold and fierce winds of a winter storm captures the imagination and calms the soul. All seasons are good and all seasons are beautiful, but winter has always been the time when I feel most at home, especially when that home is in the wilderness.
We received a surprise visit from local bush pilot Ernie Nichols, along with two of his friends. In a display of classic northern hospitality, he brought us in fresh bread, oranges, apples, milk, and 12 homemade muffins still hot from his wife Donna's oven. The surprise saved for last was a bottle of 12-year-old scotch. I think we were a kind of tourist attraction for his overseas visitors.
Now that right there defines Ernie Nichols. Huron Air, Northern Ontario. Ernie and Donna, amazing people, super helpful to me throughout Snowshoes and Solitude, throughout the Survivorman pilots. They lost their wonderful son Trevor, sadly, and he was a part of my world for making these films. And they're retired now, but they're just salt of the earth, great people. And yeah, that way it would be like Ernie to say, I'm going to take you to see this couple that's living out in the woods right now.
It was strange to be in the middle of the bush and hear talk of the recent Eagles concert or Michael Jackson's marriage. Seeing Ernie seemed to signify the beginning of the end, for with Ernie came a change in the weather.
I want to interrupt and say, Ernie's telling us the story of him going to see the Eagles. And he says, yeah, you turn around and you look and all you see, 20,000 people. And he pulls his cap back and they all look like this. And he's, balding sort of thing. And he's a character and a half. I mean, the North is full of characters. Yeah, the North is full of characters. But Ernie is one of the best.
News of a warming trend and possibly rain in a few days. It was a sad feeling, for we weren't ready to leave.
A deep appreciation for simple pleasures came from living in the bush. A warm fire, shelter. It clearly defined what was truly important in our lives.
Comment on the forest there. The boreal forest, which is different from, like, say, where my cabin is in Temagami, which is the boreal forest Great Lakes crossover region. The boreal forest is a lot of straight standing spruce and jack pine, and although jack pine's a little twisty, moss covered forest floors, really sort of mystical, the forest up in the Wabakimi area. And it's just the black spruce. You can see at night. You get a purple look to the night often. If you get a chance, the Wabakimi area of Ontario, and you're an outdoor adventurer, well, it has to be on your bucket list. It's powerfully beautiful.
Bill Mason, the celebrated canoeist, artist, and filmmaker, had this to say as scripting for one of his slideshows. Professor Arthur Lauer expressed himself thus: "Only those who have had the experience can know what a sense of physical and spiritual excitement comes to one who turns his face away from men and towards the unknown. In his small way, he is doing what the great explorers have done before him, and his elation recaptures theirs."
By the way, that spot right there, when we first came through, way back in the beginning in the spring, was where we may have had a Bigfoot experience. We had this heavy bipedal walking coming towards us, and I kind of said something out loud to kind of scare it off, like I would, as if it was a bear. And even Sue agreed with me. I said, "I don't know, man. Like, do you think that was a Bigfoot?" And even Sue was like, "What else could it have been? Two heavy feet walking through the forest in the middle of nowhere where no one goes. And I wish I'd gotten a look. I didn't. But that was one of my very first experiences. And I did have that with Sue. She might deny it now, but at the time, she agreed with me. I don't know what else to call it, because if a Bigfoot is a heavy walking bipedal creature, that's what that sounded like.
I'm over here. Hey Sue, look, a herd of caribou. Right behind me here.
Winter slowly began to loosen its icy grip on the bush. We had slept out under the stars beside rushing rapids, listened to the wolves howl, and explored every creek and valley, snowshoeing 20 to 30 kilometers almost every day. Our hearts were saddened at the thought of leaving. In a play of irony, we had to come back to make money, to cover the realities of society that affected us even out here. But also, as the snow began to melt, so then did our fresh supply of drinking water.
So, yeah, we literally had, evening discussions over, like, what are we going to do for money next year? Like, it started to become like that, which is awful, to be honest with you. Awful discussions to have. But those discussions come in because you're coming to the end of your time. And you're going to go back home. It's like, what am I going to do? Am I going to get a job? What am I doing? Am I doing this? Am I doing that? And before all of this, man, I'd been a producer at Canada's MTV called Much Music. I'd performed in rock concerts and all sorts of stuff. I've been, scouted by RCA for my music. All sorts of stuff had gone on before all of this. I've been an outdoor educator for many, many years, for like 10 years before this. And so those were some of the discussions that we had. And what was the last thing I just said there? Oh yeah, the supply of drinking water. So the thing is, we'd been drinking snow water, melted snow, all winter long. And we had no stomach issues. We were worried about going back to the lake water.
I feel the expedition was a success in that we practiced the skills that we had intended on practicing, and we were out there for the duration of the year with the exception of the interruptions that we had.
I would have to say that by far the greatest lesson that I learned from this, and I will continue to hold close to me for the rest of my life, was whatever it is that you're doing, go with your heart. Go exactly with what you feel you would like to be doing, taking into count all of the realities around that. In my past life, in the music career, or in different things that I've done in the past, as a songwriter and those types of things, there was always a way of veering off and going off on a tangent. And this expedition taught me to simply not do that. Find out what's in your heart, keep connected with your heart, which will change all the time, and stick with it above and beyond all other promises and expectations and anything else that comes your way.
The best part of the expedition was being out there. It was the adventure and the excitement of just being there. For me, it's where I wanted to be.
Would you do it again?
In a second. I'd do it again.
People ask us if a year like this has finally put all this wilderness traveling stuff out of our systems.
So let's just stop right there. Yes, they do. Oh, you guys done with it? I remember my sister-in-law, it was like, well, she actually said at one point while washing dishes or something like that, and she's talking, back talking to me. She's talking to Sue at the counter. She says, well, now that you're done with your little expedition, what do you think it's like that kind of stuff, right? Excuse me? Now that we're done with our little expedition? But people are rude. People are idiots. And they say the stupidest things. And completely failing to see the profundity. As I was saying before the battery died, people completely fail to see the profundity, the profound nature of an experience like this. If you're dreaming of doing something like this, I say do it, go for it. But remember that you're attached to things within society, and it's hard to escape all of that. And I think you can have an amazing time if you allow for the conveniences of technology and things like that. So we did this so primitive-like and tried to stay that way, and we basically went from primitive Earth technology into like being like voyageurs kind of thing, or trappers. And I'm really grateful, and I love that. But to do it again, I would do it without that kind of agenda, and I will do it again, and film it as well. Anyway, that's my little message.
How could we have them understand that it's become an even deeper embedded desire within us? This would not be the end of our wilderness life, just the beginning. I think it becomes very difficult to spend any quality time in the wilderness and not feel that there is something, a greater being, a creator at work here.
That's not an admission of religiosity. We'll call it spirituality. How's that?
We are all given the freedom to choose, and no one can decide for us how we will respond to what affects our lives. Well, we choose freedom. Out here we have learned to be true to ourselves. We choose snowshoes and solitude, a canoe, and the beautiful Canadian wilderness.
Snow, winter, spruce boughs for a floor, fur, fire, keep the body warm. Where eagles fly and the caribou lie is where we've got to be. Oh, the wolf waits there for me and you. What we dream of, a world of wind and water to explore. Keep a fire burning in our shelter. Walk across the ice to our shore. Aurora Borealis so powerfully entertains, burning like a forest fire, wild and untamed. But you dam the rivers and build the roads and cut the old growth down until there's nothing left but ground and us. And us. Snowshoes and solitudes, what we dream of. A world of wind and water to explore. Keep a fire burning in our shelter. Walk across the ice to our shore. Snowshoes and solitude, Snow, winter, spruce boughs for a floor, fur, fire, keep the soul warm. Snowshoes and solitudes, what we dream of. A world of wind and water to explore. Keep a fire burning in our shelter. Walk across the ice to our shore. Snowshoes and solitudes, what we dream of. A world of snow and ice to explore. Keep a fire burning in our shelter. We paddle across the lake to our shore. Snowshoes and solitude. Snowshoes and solitude.
And there you go. Let's look at who helped us make this happen.
The wind is light, the sky is blue. My heart is heavy when I don't have you, and I miss you. Like a parched lamb misses rain. A camp on the land, a boat on the sea. Life ain't life if you can't be free to live it. You'll always find a way. 40 hours of work week were never meant for me. Lately I've been bitten by the bug that sets us free. Wilderness wandering and ocean waves are calling. Standing in a forest you can hear when trees are falling. Oh, 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 this is free. Oh, 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 free to be. A little to the left, a little to the right, a lot in the middle, 'cause it feels so right just loving you. Neath the sun and neath the moon. Years they come, years they go. All I know is they all go by too soon. Don't waste your days away. 40 hours of work week were never meant for me. Lately I've been bitten by the bug that sets us free. Wilderness wandering and ocean waves are calling. Standing in a forest you can hear when trees are falling. Oh, 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 this is free. Oh, 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 free to be. Oh, 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 this is free.
There you go. Wow. Yeah. Interesting to look back on one's, on a section of one's life. But there you go. You asked for it, and there it was. That's the director's commentary for Snowshoes and Solitude. Next up, the entire Beyond Survival series. I'll see you guys soon. Thanks for joining me for this. I enjoyed this walk down memory lane.
Blindly, hear what I say. Just stand there, don't walk away. A revolution is coming soon. The children today can't be fooled. I know this world is smaller now. Don't ignore the simple truth. This earth is not one. Tell me where now can I roam? Tell me where now is my home, my wilderness home. We're turning every place we know into one giant farm. The dolphins and kill the whales, and bloodstains cover your sails. From the forests, from the seas, will nothing be left behind. I know this world is smaller now. Don't ignore the simple truth. The earth is not one. Tell me where now can I roam? Tell me where now is my home, my wilderness home. We're turning every place we know into one giant farm. Mother Earth.